Hi, I'm João Saravia. I was Procurement Director for the Rio 2016 Organizing Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and now I'm the executive responsible for the dissolution phase of the Organizing Committee. Some people ask us, hey guys, what are you still doing on the Organizing Committee after the games are over? The games were in August and September last year. But there's a lot to do after your event is over, so you should plan for that as well. I also give consultancy on general management and also help now organizing committees to do their work. I've got a lot of experience since the planning phase, the execution phase, and the dissolution phase now. So I hope I can give you some good advice to help you out with your events. Well, now talking a little about procurement, I think the most important thing is really knowing what you have to procure. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but it's not that obvious in an organizing committee. So if you're in the regular industry, you have a history of what's being procured, so you'll maybe adjust volumes, specification, maybe change your supplier. But in an event, you're procuring things to an operation in the future. So it's really hard to know what you have to procure when you're 6 or 5 years in advance. What we did in Rio 2016 was build a tool that we called the Procurement Master Plan. And we would go into the budget of all functional areas and understand what they would have to use for their operation. That would give us the hint of what are the tenders that we have to run and when did we have to run them. So I really give you the advice of trying to do that in your organizing committee. That will also help you know where are the bottlenecks. So where do you have the products or the services and the volumes in your local market, or if you don't have them. So if you don't have them, then you have the time to really go forward and look for them. So when people tell you, well, you have to engage the market early on, what that means is you have to know what you're going to need, and you have to know if there are suppliers in there that can help you, or you have to help them develop, or if you'll have to bring suppliers from abroad. So that's basically it. So that's the advice. Really try to understand what you have to procure. So now talking about budgets. You probably have different sources of funds to run your event. So if you're receiving private money, it's just your rules of receiving the money, your rules for procurement, and you'll be audited by what you have done. So be sure that you can be audited, and that's the only advice I can give you. If you're receiving public funds though, there are some things to pay attention. First of all, sometimes the mechanisms for receiving public money are not in place. So you have to discuss with government how to receive those funds. Second thing is, if you receive those funds directly, sometimes, depending on the country you are, you will have to obey to some public procurement rules to use those funds, and you will be controlled and audited afterwards. By the controlling agencies of the government. So pay attention to that and be sure that you have people that know how to do those things in your team. Either receiving the money, doing the procurement, and going through the audits. One other way you can do is not receiving those funds directly, but switching responsibilities. So you can give a responsibility to the government for something that was your responsibility to deliver, and then now they will deliver it, so you don't have to receive the funds for doing that. One thing that really worked in Rio 2016 was security. So instead of receiving funds for that, the government got all the responsibility for security, and obviously they were really committed to that. So be sure that if you switch a responsibility, you switch to something that whoever is getting that responsibility is really committed to it. And obviously the federal government was committed to the security inside the Brazilian territory, so they did it that very well. If you are giving another kind of responsibility, for example, VIP lounges, I would give that responsibility to a sponsor, for example, because to them, the VIP lounges is one of the most important places in your event, because that's where they will take their clients to do business. So they are really committed that the VIP lounges are very good. So always, if you're switching responsibilities and not really receiving the funds, try to pay attention that you will have to switch responsibilities with something that whoever is taking that responsibility is really committed to delivering that very well. Sustainability is one of the things that people don't talk too much about when they're giving general advice on management or events. But I believe it's one of the most important things that we should take into account. But even when people talk about it, they will focus on reputational risk and doing things in a responsible way, which I believe you should do, obviously. But besides that, sustainability can give you cost savings, and people usually don't link those two ideas together. So if you're building a venue from zero, if you're in the planning phase and you build a green venue, it will cost you almost the same of a not green one or a regular one. But on the operation of it, it will give you lots of cost savings in energy or water, just to give a couple of examples. But people usually talk about infrastructure, but they won't talk about operations. But if you plan your operations to be sustainable as well, if you're talking about logistics, if you're talking about catering, cleaning, security, whatever you're doing on your operations, if you plan them to be sustainable, they will give you cost savings as well. So I have the experience of participating in the delivery and the planning of two of the biggest events on earth, which are the Olympics and the Paralympics. And we build a sustainable supply chain on that, and we had savings by doing it. So no matter what people tell you, if you really do things sustainable from the planning phase, you will get cost savings on your operation. So take a look at it. So as final words, what I would tell you is 3 keywords that you should have in mind during all the process from the beginning to the end of your organization. First one is integration. Especially in the first years of the organizing committee, the functional areas are not delivering anything really tangible. So they will be working on their planning, preparing their operations in silos, and they will not talk to each other. That's quite common. But when things start to really happen and be tangible, you realize that the discussions were not integrated. So if you can bring integration from the beginning, it's always better. Second key word is must-haves against nice-to-haves. So no matter how big your budget is, you will have a limitation. And you have to be sure that your must-haves are covered. People will have lots of different ideas, and I really encourage people to be really creative, but you'll have to take decisions on should we do this or not because we don't have enough money for it. And always be sure that you do the must-haves and you have your budget covered to do those things. If you can do the nice-to-haves, better. Third thing is legacy. So your city, your country has decided to host the games for a reason. And again, you will have to take decisions. And if you have in the back of your mind, okay, let me do a decision that's going to be better for legacy, that's better. So always have that in mind, to really do things that will give a positive legacy to the region that's hosting the games. Those are more general advice, general keywords. Going more specifically into security, one thing that really worked in Rio 2016 is that the head of security in the organizing committee had been head of the federal police. So he knew all the forces of security in the country. He had connections to the army, and he was influential. So he really could put all those forces together to work and collaborate. And in our understanding, security and safety was quite successful in Rio 2016. We didn't have any major issue with security. One thing that didn't go that well is the procurement for the private security of the organizing committee. So we really took too long to define how big would be the responsibility of the government into the security, and there was a small part that was responsibility of the organizing committee. But again, we only knew that too late, so we did have time to procure. We procured it in a good cost, we procured good companies, but we could have had more time to train those forces and specific things for the events, to fine-tune how they would have to deal with the public, how they would have to do a mag and bag procedure, for example, so that the lines could be less big, and that kind of thing. So the really fine-tuning of the training. So if you can decide that early on and procure that with more time, it would be good to run the operation more smoothly. Well, those are the final words. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope we have given good advice that will be valuable to your event. And if you need anything else, you can always contact me by email, LinkedIn. We'll be really happy to help. Thank you.